Should the 49ers make Deebo Samuel the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL? I'll discuss this next on tonight's Jack Hammer Show. Hey, everybody, this is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Hope you're doing well on this Friday evening. Wanted to come in and talk a little bit about Deebo Samuel and his contract discussion, dispute, what have you. As you'll know by now, it's pretty well known that Deebo Samuel has gone ahead and scrubbed the 49ers from his social media. All of his pictures are off of Instagram and so on and so forth. Definitely a negotiating tactic on Samuel's part. The question that I want to answer today, and I mentioned this earlier this morning on Twitter in my segment that I do, my little tweet that I do on a daily basis, the 49ers according to Jack. Today I said that Deebo Samuel is worth $120 million over 4 years in new money, if that's what it takes. So let me go ahead and explain my thought on this. Deebo Samuel is the best offensive player on the 49ers. He may be second in a couple of years once Trey Lance is able to get his feet fully underneath him and if he's able to develop into the quarterback that the 49ers hope that he will become based off of what they gave up to trade up to number 3 and take Lance. But at this point, the 49ers offense begins and starts really with Deebo Samuel. The quarterback obviously is a key important piece, but that quarterback needs Samuel there to help make the engine run. The 49ers at this point don't have the explosive playmaker at the running back position. That's why I saw Deebo Samuel have to play some there last year. I do believe that with Trey Lance, you'll see some more explosiveness from the 49ers offense. Part of that has to do with Deebo Samuel, his playmaking ability, though, and his ability to take the top off of defense. We saw it last year when the two played together against Houston. I think that's a situation where if you have Deebo Samuel out there, it's going to make life a little bit easier for Trey Lance. So as far as the 4 years, $120 million, here's why I think it works. If you look at the money given to Tyreek Hill, he is currently the highest paid based off of average annual value. If you look at his number, it's $120 million, 4 years. That's the top right now. So we'll see where it falls. But that number works. That averages out to a cap hit of less than $23 million per year over the first 4 years of Tyreek Hill's deal with the Dolphins. From the beginning, if you followed the shows that I've done either on my own channel or over with Grant Cohn or with the one I do with Jesse here, the ones that I do over with Rob Shue on his channel, I've stated all along that I feel like Deebo Samuel is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 to $25 million. A 4-year, $130 million deal with the structure of Tyreek Hill puts him in that ballpark. Like I said, it's less than $23 million. I don't really care about 120 and 4. That doesn't really matter to me. It matters more, and really it matters to Deebo Samuel from the standpoint that he gets to say he's the highest paid. It's maybe even more important to his agent to say that he got that for his player. But even if you look at the Tyreek Hill deal, it's highly unlikely that he's going to see all 4 years of the new money and all $120 million of that new money. The way that that's structured, they can get out of that after year 4. It's a really small dead cap hit in comparison to what his cap is. I think it's in the neighborhood of $10 million or less. I think it's maybe even around 5. If the 49ers can do a deal like that with Deebo Samuel, you do it. Deebo Samuel is one of the top 5 easily best wide receivers in the game. He was trending last year to be probably the top receiver. He was actually outpacing, the guy who finished number 1 with all the yards and everything last year was Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel was stride for stride with him through the first 9 weeks of the season. It wasn't until the Rams game when they started using him as in more of out of the backfield as a wide back, quote, wide back position was what he called himself, that you saw Deebo Samuel's numbers drop. He was averaging 10 targets a game over his first 8 games. That dropped to only 5 over the last 8 that he played. And that's a big reason why his numbers don't match up to a Cooper Kupp. I said a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, I said that I feel like Deebo Samuel has the ability to be the next great 49ers wide receiver. Everything that you saw out of him last year, everything that I saw of him last year showed me that from a wide receiver position, he had some drops. That's a problem. But I think he'll be able to clear those up. He's always had a little bit of drops when you go back to college, but that's something that could, change. Drops don't always continue to happen. Jerry Rice, who I said is the level of play that I believe you'll see out of Deebo Samuel. Will he be able to play as long as Jerry Rice? No. But the level of play, the wide receiver play that you saw of Deebo Samuel last year was as good as any 49ers receiver that I've seen since 1981. It was top level. So for the 49ers to pass up, to have drafted that player and then give him away, if that's what they decide to do, I think is a huge mistake. I would say for 120, the other question that I was asked on Twitter today would be, what is your, how much of that is guaranteed? And the answer that I gave was between 50 and 70 million. I understand that's a big range. There's a big difference between 50 and 70. But the reason that I gave that range was because the 50 million is if they're giving him that 50 over the first 2 years of the contract. If they decide that they want to give him 70 million, that is over 3 years. The difference is, when you go and you look at the deal that Hill did, for example, it was 52.5 million, right around that ballpark, maybe a little bit different here and there, but pretty close to 52.5 million was his guarantee. About half of that was signing bonus. The rest was his base pay for 22 and 23. And then he has a roster bonus in 23. So that his full guarantee is gone after the first 2 years. Deebo Samuel is a guy that I would say if you give him $70 million guaranteed, which I know is way higher than what the 49ers have ever done in the past, that's an okay deal, especially if you put it over 3 years. Because after 3 years, you can start to move on. Deebo Samuel is a good enough player where you can give him that big money with the expectation that you're hoping that he's going to be able to continue to improve. And I didn't say this earlier, but I should have. One of the biggest things about this is I would rather give that money to Deebo Samuel today than to give that money to Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or any of these other, or Stephon Diggs, who did it up in Buffalo. The reason? Deebo Samuel's in year 3. He's an ascending player. These other guys are all already at the top of their game and soon to be on the downside. So that's why I feel like this is a deal that you do. The other piece is if you do if they give him 4 more years on top of what he has, it's really like it'd be, it's 5 total years, right? Because it's an extension of his rookie deal, which still has this next year coming up on it. By the time you get to the point where you would want to cut him or maybe think of cutting him 4 years down the road, that's when the big money starts to hit for the quarterback, Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be on his rookie deal for these next 3 years. The 4th year would be his first year on a new deal, which would probably not be that expensive. If you look at what the Chiefs paid for Patrick Mahomes, his first the first year of his big extension, I think was only $5 or $6 million against the salary cap. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the 49ers to go this route. The other thing, when you look at I know that Akash did a really good job of showing the different Akash. I'm not even going to say his last name because I'm going to butcher it. I apologize. He did a really good job with his tweet showing the previous highs for the 49ers in terms of guarantees given out. If the 49ers stay in that ballpark and they don't adjust to what's coming, they're going to lose out, not only on Deebo Samuel, but they're going to lose out on other players as well. The salary cap is exploding in 2024. These guys know that. You just need to worry about doing your, worry about managing it, dealing with the upgrades that the increases along the way. Their numbers are going to have to increase. The players know it. So it's not going to, that's the direction that it's headed. So as far as, that's not okay in the comment section. As far as as far as Samuel goes, though, you give him the money. This is the guy that carries your team, that deserves it. He, as I said, he was your best weapon in 2021. He's going to be better with Trey Lance because he's not going to have to worry about just getting the underneath stuff. He's going to actually be able to run deep routes. He's not going to always have to be the guy playing out of the backfield. He's not going to always have to be the guy that's getting all of his yards based off of yak. If you have a guy like Trey Lance throwing him the ball, if Trey Lance is the guy that everybody expects him to be, Deebo Samuel is going to start getting passes further away from the line of scrimmage where those collisions aren't going to be as great. I understand that when you look at Deebo Samuel, he was on pace for 1,800 receiving yards this year. That would have been the second most in the history of the 49ers. Would have been just behind Jerry Rice's best year. And that's with only 16 games played. He missed one game. He was on pace for that until they asked him to switch positions. And if I'm Deebo Samuel, quite honestly, if the 49ers are trying to use the fact that I take snaps as a running back against me, as you heard Jeremy Fowler say today on ESPN, if that's reality, then I don't blame Deebo Samuel for being upset. Because if that was myself, I would just kind of flip him the bird and say, peace out. That's because you're screwing me. I did you a favor by filling a role for you that you needed filled. I did my job to make your team as good as it could be. Pay me. And I think that's the deal. And if the 49ers decide that they want to trade him, because I do see people talking about, possibly trading him and those types of things, that's a bad deal, because you have a guy that's one of the best players in the league. And as I said earlier, he's ascending. You're going to trade him for guys who you might at some point, if you're lucky, hold his jock. I mean, really? And, this isn't anything about, a player being above anybody else, but every player has a value. Deebo Samuel, he's never put himself above the team. He's always been out and been a team player. He's always done what's been asked of him. As a rookie, he had a very strong season going on. It was they were figuring him out. He hadn't played, he was new. He had a strong season. His rookie season was the second best rookie wide receiver season in the history of the 49ers, behind only Jerry Rice. And I think it was less than 100 yards difference. So if you're going to talk about Deebo Samuel and say his numbers haven't been that good, I mean, you're wrong when you compare it to the history of wide receivers, even within the 49ers. Deebo Samuel's rookie season was not far behind Jerry Rice. He actually had more receptions than Jerry Rice. He broke the team record for receptions. So, That's that piece. He does have the injury history. I totally understand that there's some some potential risk, but that's what you do when you have a guy that's the best player. Is you do take risks. And as far as like Trent over here, he says nobody's arguing his value. Well, I disagree with that. Maybe they're not arguing his value to the team, but they're arguing against his value in terms of what he should be paid. I've seen plenty of folks today on Twitter talking about giving reasons why Deebo Samuel does not deserve to be the highest paid wide receiver. Again, I disagree with that, because if you look at what Deebo Samuel did as a rookie, it was a strong rookie campaign. Yeah, he had some injuries in 2020. Definitely. That's the issue with him, possibly. But even in 2020, he was the best player on the 49ers when he was healthy. Last year, again, last year's season was as good as any that the 49ers have had since Jerry Rice. His total yards from scrimmage was actually, I think, like less than 100 yards or around 100 yards under what Jerry Rice's best was. His touchdowns were a couple less. I understand he had to play the running back role, and he did it spectacularly. If he's playing with Trey Lance, his numbers are going to go up. Trey Lance can hit the deep ball. Trey Lance can allow him to go things in different directions. And you're right, Bryant. He did have injuries his rookie season. Again, this is a guy who he had some injuries. He dealt with them. He played pretty strong. And even with dealing with the injuries, like I said, his numbers were second to Jerry Rice in team history. So when you talk about Deebo Samuel, you give him 4 years of new money. You give him $120 million if that's what it takes to sign him. You give him $135 million if that's what it takes to sign him. You give him $55 to $70 million, maybe 50, since that's what I said earlier. So you give him $50 to $70 million in guaranteed money, either over the first 50 over the first two, 70 over the first three. The 49ers can do it. They have the money. Does Jed York want to pay it? I was looking at some numbers on Over the Cap a couple of days ago. The 49ers have a lot of money that they've guaranteed to players. They're actually one of the top in the NFL when it comes to players. And I'm saying one of the top, I guess I should say in the top third. Not like they're not number one or two. They're in the top third, I believe, in guaranteed money given out to players. So they spend money on players. It's not that they don't, but and I just, I think this guy is a guy that you would definitely go. E. Kim says, if I'm Deebo, I would sign a short-term contract with a chance to get on a big payday. Again, that's the 4-year deal. That's the 4-year deal. For Deebo Samuel, if I can get 4 years, 120, you get that. For the 49ers, you're getting the best years of Deebo Samuel's career. At that point, if Deebo Samuel wants bigger money, I would probably be against it, because at that point you've maximized his value, and with the way that he plays and so on and so forth, he might start to have declined. That's again, the whole point of me being in favor of the 49ers paying big money to Deebo Samuel is that you pay it to your ascending players. The 49ers have done a good job of giving it to ascending players. The one big deal that I'm not a fan of, if you followed me long enough, you on Twitter, you'll have seen me question the 49ers giving big money and making Trent Williams the highest paid left tackle. That's one that I question. The reason? Trent Williams has already been at his height. He's still really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not good, but he's a descending player. He is who he is. If anything, you're going to see him start to miss more and more and more games because he's starting to get older. We'll see how that one all plays out for him. But a 4-year, $120 million, $125 million extension for Deebo Samuel plays right into the time frame for the 49ers that makes sense. You're going to also, like I said, you're going to have about a $35 million a year deal for Nick Bosa by the time that comes up. The 49ers have for all the moaning and groaning that we've done about the 49ers drafting, it's pretty crazy when you realize that 5 of their 6 top players were draft picks. Trent Williams being the lone exception. So we'll see how this plays out. But I believe that you're going to see the 49ers, if they don't re-sign and do what it takes to get Deebo Samuel, I will be back here to tell you that they made a mistake. If they go out and win the Super Bowl afterwards, I'll laugh and I'll say that I was wrong, because that's usually what I'll do. I might even try to come up with some excuses, but it'll be pretty hard. But give Deebo Samuel what he wants. Give him 4 years. Give him 120 million. Give him 125 million. If it's not even that number, and it's about wanting to get higher guarantee, give him 4 years with 55 to 70 million guaranteed. He's earned it. He's worth it. He's as good, if not better, than these other guys that are asking for that. When he's healthy, he is the best top 3, top 5, like I already said, for sure, wide receiver in the NFL with the potential to be the top. So that's it. And then, like, real quick, as E. Kim says, if I'm Bosa, I'd ask for 40 million a season. I would too. Why not? Hey, you can't lose, right? I mean, you ask for it, you're going to have to come into some kind of a discussion about it, right? I think that Bosa is going to be probably a $35 million a year player is what I think that number is going to come out to. Niner Sickness says Jack is Deebo Samuel's agent. I'm not Deebo Samuel's agent. What I will say about that comment is I am pro player if it makes sense. I think the Deebo Samuel thing makes sense. I just see a lot of folks on Twitter making this case for the owner. If you're talking about Deebo Samuel not being worth whatever number he's looking at or looking for, you are making the argument for ownership. Even if you think it's a smart decision for the football team, you're siding with the team, you're siding with ownership. So that's the difference there. If it's a deal that makes sense, I go pro player. Deebo Samuel is worth it. He is worth that kind of money. Again, his season last year would have been big if he wasn't asked to change positions. His two out of his 3 years, which he's been healthy, those two of his 3 seasons that has been healthy, he has produced on the level of Jerry Rice with the 49ers, sans the touchdown production, which might change if he doesn't have to make those touchdowns in tight spaces. When you go back and you look at the Jerry Rice and Joe Montana, Steve Young era, Jerry Rice had a number of those touchdowns were on long throws. Some of them were underneath, some of them were short, what have you. He also was given the ball plenty deep by those guys. And that would benefit Deebo Samuel, having a quarterback like Trey Lance, who can deliver the ball to him down the field. So we'll see how it works out. Give him the money, is what I say. He's worth it. And fan of the team, not the player. I agree with you too. And I agree with you. And I would say that being a fan of the team over a player is the way you go. And I'm not saying that I'm a fan of Deebo Samuel. I'm giving you the what I think his value is, which is, I think, much higher than what other people might. The arguments against Deebo Samuel, if you look at the arguments against him getting paid like the Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, it's all about trying to show the things that he's not doing, right? I think that when you have a special player like Samuel on your team, you do what you can do. I said the same thing when you had the DeForest Buckner deal. When you have a guy that you've developed, and you've developed him to an all-pro level, which puts him at one of the top players in the NFL, you keep him. And I think that you need to go that direction. And then lastly, I will just go ahead and address the question. This one from Ekim in the comment. He says, if a team offered a first and 2 second-round picks for Deebo, I'd listen. And like Ekim, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the stream. I think that's a mistake. You're not going to get a Deebo. The likelihood that you're going to get Deebo Samuel with a first, with that first round pick, the 2 second-round picks, or whatever moves you make with those picks that you receive, the likelihood that you're going to get a player that impacts your team the way that Deebo Samuel impacts the 49ers is unlikely. It's just, okay. Dang it. You guys keep bringing up points over in the comment section. You're getting me to think about different things. Here's the other one. How many times have we heard over the course of free agency that the 49ers need to go all in? The 49ers need to do what the Rams do. The 49ers need to spend money like the Rams do to get the best players. Well, the thing is, the 49ers have the best player. They have one of the best players in the NFL on their team. If you're not going to give the money to one of your best players in the NFL that's already on your team, why would you go spend a bunch of money in free agency on a guy? And wide receivers aren't a dime a dozen. They aren't. I mean, I understand that you can get some impact out of them, but I want to see how many receivers are going to take a screen pass and go 80 yards for a touchdown or set you up on the 1 yard line and help you win a game in the middle of the season. How many receivers are going to catch a screen pass at the 40, take it to the house in the NFC Championship game? That's what I think you need to think about when it comes to when you try to say that these guys are a dime a dozen. There are a lot of receivers that can play in the NFL. There are a few that can bring to your team what Deebo Samuel brings. We'll see how it works out. Again, it's only, what are we right now? We're early April. We have until August, end of July, before the team hits training camp. Long way to go on this thing. It just is the hot topic right now, so I wanted to jump on and discuss it with y'all. So, Tommy, I think says it best. Thanks for the donation, Tommy. He says, I'm going to go ahead and use your exclamation in my response. You don't trade the goddamn MVP of your offense. That says it all. It really does. And you don't trade them for draft picks for guys that you don't know how they're going to turn out. So you have it. Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate the donation. I appreciate everybody over in the comment section. Niner Sickness, it was good to see you. I don't know if I've seen you in my comment section before, but I appreciate you joining. You do a good job. I like the stuff that Jesse put together for you. That's awesome. Maybe we can talk some point down the road. Thanks to everybody in there. Tom, thanks you as well. You say, I'm with you. Deebo is rare. Have to keep leaders like that with the team. He defines competitive greatness and at his best when it matters most. Absolutely. There's a whole bunch of other folks over there. Just want to say thank you all very much. The other piece on that is, in addition to Deebo Samuel and what he's going to bring, Trey Lance, don't alter your expectations of Trey Lance. If you were a guy who was saying that Trey Lance would give the 49ers the best chance to win in 2021, stick with it. Ride with it. Even if the 49ers don't get to the Super Bowl this year or the 49ers don't make the playoffs this year, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's his fault because there is a defense that has to play as well. But I'll tell you this. The 49ers have a pretty darn impressive roster. And if the quarterback stays healthy, they'll be in the playoffs. Have a great night, everybody. It's Friday. Get out. Enjoy the weekend. I will be back on Monday, hopefully with Rob Shue. That's the expectation. Thank you all for joining me. If you could do me a favor, like and subscribe. Get yourself over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Check that out. Hit that little bell notification here on YouTube as well so that you know when I go live. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the followers. Even if you disagree with me, that's what makes this whole thing go. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.